Hello gardeners, September is here and it's a crucial month for our gardens. It is time to start planting your fall garden if you have not started already. So today I'm going to share my top 10 garden tasks and tips that should be completed in the month of September so you're ready to capitalize on one of the best seasons for growing food, which is fall. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Jara. I've been gardening all of my life and I'm a professional seed and plant nursery. I love to share my knowledge and teach others how to garden and grow food. So you've come to the right place if you want to improve your gardening skills. These garden tasks for the month of September are designed to keep you on track so you can meet your garden goals. But I have some other resources available to you. First is my monthly garden guide, which lists all the things you can either start from seed or transplant this month. The September garden guide was released last week, so make sure you watch that video. Also, I'm doing a free live garden class on Sunday, September 8th at 6 p.m. Eastern time right here on my YouTube channel. The topic is fall gardening and you can ask garden questions in real time. But anyways, let's get into these super important garden tasks and reminders that should be completed in the month of September. My first task has to do with sowing seeds because everyone is asking me what can be sowed outdoors versus what needs to be sowed indoors. We all know that if it's winter time or it's cold outside, then you need to sow seeds indoors. But did you know the same happens if it's too hot outside? Extreme heat and cold are not good for sowing seeds. So take a look outside. If temperatures are above 85 degrees Fahrenheit, I encourage you to sow seeds indoors. Right now in September, we are sowing a lot of cool season crops to grow during the fall and winter. Many of these crops, especially things in the brassicas family, so that includes broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, get stunted in growth if exposed to high heat. So if you ever noticed the seedlings just stay super tiny and they don't grow, they are stunted and they might not ever recover from that. Sow seeds for cool season crops indoors if it's hot outside. I simply take a mini greenhouse and attach some grow lights to it with some zip ties. It's super easy and helpful. If it is a warm season crop like tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, and eggplants, then it's okay to sow seeds outdoors. They won't get stunted. However, I highly recommend you sow seeds in something that covers them or offers some sort of protection from the elements. If they get rained on, this transfers a lot of pathogens that cause disease, and it really sucks to have your little seedlings get washed out from the pouring rain. I sow seeds and grow them out in my screened porch for these reasons. I have a how to sow seeds guide, which I will link in the description. It goes through my entire seed sowing setup along with tips and tricks. Task number 2 is September is a great time to add soil amendments if needed before you plant up your fall garden. If you're not sure what kind of amendments your soil needs, I recommend you contact your local county extension office. They usually do soil testing at a very inexpensive price, or you can get a soil testing kit from Amazon. I will link below to the one I have used. The kit was really nice because it gives you results along with directions on how much of each nutrient needs to be added. My third task is if you have been thinking about installing drip irrigation, then now is a great time to do it before you start planting your fall garden. I just finished solarizing this entire area so it's nice and clean, ready to be planted. I will be installing my drip irrigation system, which connects to a Wi-Fi water timer that I can control with an app on my phone. I also have a fertilizer mixer attachment that pushes water-soluble fertilizer through my drip irrigation lines. I can't tell you how much of a time saver this has been. Not to mention, when I go on vacation, I don't have to worry about my plants dying. Install your drip irrigation system before you start planting. My flat drip tape lines come with built-in emitters that are spaced 6, 8, or 12 inches apart, depending on which one I choose. I choose the spacing according to the crop I plan on growing in that particular spot. For example, I use the 6-inch spacing for planting onions, while I use the 12-inch spacing for bigger crops like tomatoes. The emitters help me perfectly space my plants. I have a tutorial showing how I installed my drip irrigation system, which I will link below. The fourth task is to make a map of your garden. Every fall and sometimes in late spring, I will completely gut out this entire space. So that means I'm changing the configuration of my garden's layout according to what I want to plant that season. This gives me so much flexibility and it's fun to change things up. To plan my layouts, I like to draw the garden space on some graphing paper. Generally, I use square foot gardening guidelines to space my plants, so each square of the graphing paper is 1 foot. This helps me visualize where I'm going to put all of my plants and make sure my garden is full. I also pencil in opportunities for vertical garden structures like trellis systems or cattle panel trellises because I try to vertical garden as much as possible. This helps to pick the plants up from the floor, making it harder for pests to get on them. It also improves air circulation, helping to dry the surface of the leaves and slow down the spread of leaf diseases. Tip number 5 is September is the last month in the summer season, so you're probably finishing up with the last bit of harvest from your summer crops. Right now is a great time to decide which plants you're going to allow to go to seed in order to save your own seeds for next season if that's what you want to do. Choose the healthiest, most vigorous plants that produce the highest quality fruit to save seeds from. Leave the veggies or the fruits on the plants until they're are ready to be harvested and stored away. This will vary greatly depending on what crop it is, but in general, if it's a bean sort of thing or loofah or peas, let the pods dry out and turn brown before harvesting to collect the seeds. If it's a melon, cucumber, or squash, let the veggies turn yellow. They might get a little squishy and have a strong smell, but it's necessary so you can harvest mature seeds. If it's peppers, leave the peppers on the plant until they are 100% at their maturity color. Most peppers turn red at maturity, not all of them, but most of them. Then remove the seeds out and dry. If it's tomatoes, save seeds from ripe fruit. You can squeeze some out on a paper plate to dry them, or in my case, I really like to ferment tomato seeds for a few days to remove the outer gel that surrounds each seed. This makes the seed more clean and lasts longer in storage, but that's up to you. My 6th tip is for those of you that garden in areas prone to get hit by hurricanes. September and October are the most active months for hurricanes. I'm in Orlando, Florida, and we get hit by one every year. It is already a stressful situation, so the last thing you want to worry about on top of preparing your house is also preparing the garden. Just get it ready in advance. Walk around your garden, remove anything that can easily fly in strong winds, secure your trellis systems, take down any patio umbrellas, secure your green stock garden towers, or just move them up against the side of the house. Some of you have sent me photos of using bungee cords to strap them to a T-post, which is what I'm going to do. I like to tie young fruit trees to T-posts for added support. Definitely harvest all the seeds you possibly can so they don't fly away or get mold on them from too much moisture. Harvest and dry herbs before a hurricane comes through and blows all the leaves away. Think about areas that get flooded and move your plants or your containers out of the way. One huge tip for those of us planting up a fall garden during hurricane season: plant crops and things that are very susceptible to root rot in a container or grow bag so it's elevated off the floor and hopefully won't get flooded out. When a hurricane comes through my area, this entire garden space gets flooded and all of my tomato plants die. That's just way too much water for them. So now going forward, anytime I grow tomatoes during the fall months, I plant them in grow bags, which protect their root systems from flooding. Everything else seems to be okay. My onions, my broccoli, beans, etc. It's always just the tomatoes. Now moving on to task number 7. I mentioned green stock garden towers, which brings me to this next garden task, and that's cleaning the towers and refreshing the soil. I am obsessed with green stock garden towers because it has helped me expand how much I can grow in my very small garden. These things are fantastic for growing a large amount of fall garden crops like herbs, small leafy greens, micro dwarf tomatoes, and beans. So I'm backfilling each pocket with new soil that I have mixed with some Espoma organic granular fertilizer to add nutrients back in before I start planting up. Growing all of these crops in a green stock garden planter has freed up so much space that I can dedicate to some of the larger crops like tomatoes and squash. And my 8th task for the month of September is to build new growing spaces. Build new raised beds or set up some new grow bags just in time for fall planting. I started this garden with just 2 raised beds, and every year I slowly added more. That way you don't get overwhelmed. I have used all sorts of materials to build raised beds, but by far my favorite is pressure treated wood. I usually plan the size of my beds to match the dimensions of wood that I find at hardware stores to reduce how much cutting I have to do. So for example, a good standard bed is 8 foot by 4 foot. I would buy 2 8-foot long boards for the length side, and then I buy one more 8-foot long board that I would cut right in half to make the 4-foot ends. Then I just screw them together. Easy peasy. As far as depth, I recommend at least 10 inches to cut down on soil cost. I fill the bottom of my beds with pieces of cardboard boxes, leaves from around the garden, or trimmed tree trunks or branches. An awesome resource is if you grow bananas, you can just cut a stalk down and chop it into pieces to use it to fill the bottom of a bed. I then fill these beds with the cheapest compost I can find. And finally, I top that with a nice thick layer of wood chips. If you don't want to build anything, then use grow bags. I have grow bags all over my garden because they easily fit in unused spaces or awkward corners where I can't build a raised garden bed. They have helped me utilize the most space I can to grow more food. My 9th task for September is plant things to help the pollinators, bees, and birds. I would say the theme of September should be supporting local wildlife. Here is a list of things you can plant to help support them. The monarch butterfly migration is about to begin, so plant lots of large, flat flowers that are rich in nectar to support adult butterflies, and plant native milkweed because it is a host plant for the monarch butterfly caterpillars. The end of summer tends to be a dearth period for bees, meaning there is not much blooming out there in the wild for them to forage on. So plant nectar-rich plants to help feed the bees. I find that planting a wide variety of flowers is best because different species of bees prefer different flowers. I would say the bees go crazy over African blue basil and tithonia the most in my garden, even more than borage. Lastly, remember the birds. They are also migrating south for fall. I set up a lot of bird feeders to attract them into my garden. They eat a lot of caterpillars, worms, and bugs. I have even seen them eat squash bugs before, which is a pest that doesn't have many natural predators. So yeah, I attract a lot of birds to my garden. My 10th garden task and last task for September is to start an herb garden or add more to your existing herb garden. If you're a warm climate gardener like me, meaning you have mild winters with no snow, traditional European herbs grow best during the fall, winter, and spring. I am sowing seeds for all sorts of herbs in 72 cell seed trays so I can grow out a bunch at once. Herbs have strong smells that deter pests, so I like to use short or low growing herbs as a living mulch under larger crops. Things like thyme, oregano, and dwarf basil varieties work really great for this. You could also take cuttings and root them to grow new plants even faster than starting them from seed. I like to use rooting hormone powder. Usually they root in about 2 weeks when I dip the ends in some of this powder. A lot of herbs are also host plants for butterfly caterpillars, so grow way more than you need, knowing that some of them will get sacrificed to these butterfly caterpillars. So yeah, that's my top 10 must-do garden tasks for the month of September. If you're still watching this and made it to the end, I have a special bonus tip for you. If you're located in a mild winter climate like me, no snow, and you plan on planting garlic this fall and winter season, you need to start placing your seed garlic orders or pre-orders right now. This is because seed garlic needs to be vernalized or exposed to cold temperatures for about 8 to 12 weeks before planting. The longer, the better. So you will literally place your seed garlic in a brown paper bag and put it in the fridge. Garlic needs to think it went through a winter period in order to properly bulb up at the end of the season. Using my garden as an example, I plan to plant garlic in November, so I'm buying my seed garlic now from various online sources so I have time to vernalize them before planting in November. Okay, so I'm done, I promise. These are my top 10 tasks and tips for the month of September. By staying on top of these tasks, you'll ensure your garden stays healthy, productive, and beautiful. I recommend you watch this video next, which lists 12 different types of veggies and crops that need to be planted right now in September. Thanks for watching and happy gardening.